All right, guys, welcome into another video. I'm trying to get probably one of these videos out a week. That's about all I can do right now. But I think it's gonna kind of differ each week. Um, I want to get one NFL video out, just kind of my thoughts on the week or whatever it might be. I thought about maybe doing some power ranking stuff, but I figured after week one, there's not really that much kind of data to go off of. Not You can't really be that definitive about your takes after what you see from week one. The biggest thing to remember after week one is don't overreact based on whether your team looks really good or really bad. Um, Football is a high variance sport. One or two plays can play a massive role in the swing of the game. We might be talking the biggest example of that is, Titans Bears. Will Levis doesn't throw the ball from his knees, backhanding it to Tyreek Stevenson or whoever it was. We might be looking at the Titans as, maybe a surprise playoff team or something, or I don't know about playoffs, but, a surprise good team, and the Bears are screwed. But, one play can swing it that much. You count that in the block punt. But so I didn't want to do power rankings for that reason because, I don't want to be overreacting too much to week one. So what I decided instead is I'm going to share my screen here in a sec, and I'm going to go through all of the games in week one, just spend a minute or two on each game and, kind of let you guys know what I'm seeing, what I want to see moving forward, what I'm worried about, what I think is encouraging. And we're going to start right away. And we are going to start with the first game of the year where my Baltimore Ravens. For those of you that don't know my fandom, the hometown team is technically the Bills, and I'm a massive supporter of the Bills. I've been to many, many games with my dad and whatnot. But I actually grew up a Ravens fan as a kid. Just loved Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. But so I'm kind of a fan of both. If I had to pick one, it's probably the Ravens. But I'm kind of a fan of both. Whatever. All right. So the Ravens Chiefs game. Obviously, this has been almost it's been almost a week since this game has been played, so everyone's kind of digested their thoughts on this. But here are my main takeaways. I think both of these teams, after watching the rest of week one, look very, very good. I think from the Chiefs' perspective, I think they'll take a little step back on defense from last year because they were so good on defense and they lost L'Jarius Sneed. I still think they're going to be great on defense, but it's pretty much, I think, locked in that they'll be a little bit worse. But they're a lot more explosive on offense this year than they were last year, so I think it makes up for it. Um, Obviously, you saw um, the Xavier Worthy end around. You saw that explosion. Rashee Rice looks really, really good. Um, he's really dynamic in that short to intermediate game and then run after the catch. They're going to get Hollywood Brown here in the next week or two. So that's going to be huge. But the one big weakness they have is their tackles are not very good. Juwan Taylor is average to below average. And then Kingsley Suamataia, who is the rookie, I think has the tools and can get better, but he's really got to develop. That's definitely the weak point. The Chiefs are still the best team in the league, in my opinion. But I do think the Ravens showed that they can hang with them 100%. And, if Isaiah Likely has a slightly smaller foot or Lamar connects with Zay Flowers, they might be going for two and they might win that game. From the Ravens' perspective, the big storyline is the offensive line does not look very good and they do have to figure out a lot. I think they have some pieces that if they can get some continuity, they can be fine. But I am very worried about the outlook with that offensive line. I think the defense will be a little bit worse this year, but I think what they truly have to figure out is A, how to use Derrick Henry to get the most out of him. And it's very tough when you have those offensive line problems. But one thing that I think is going to work in their favor a lot this year is that Lamar has slimmed down and showed in this game that he is still an electric runner when he is slimmed down and he is looking to run the ball. You can see right here, it's 16 for 122 on the ground. And I think last year, obviously, he won MVP, but I do think it was a little bit of a down MVP year. There was no clear candidate. I think Lamar developed even more of that kind of great pocket awareness where even if he is getting pressured by a poor offensive line, he knows how to evade it, obviously, but then keep his eyes downfield and, throw the ball downfield. And it negates a lot of the negative effects of getting pressure on your quarterback when he can, make three guys miss almost at ease. But the obviously the thing that makes Lamar great is his mobility. So one thing that kind of annoyed me last year is obviously he won MVP and he had a good season. But what makes Lamar great is his insane athletic ability. He's a good passer. I don't think he's great. I think he's a very good passer. What makes him an elite quarterback is you combine a good passer with the best rushing quarterback we've ever seen. So why are we having him gain weight and, you know, play more from the pocket like last year when he can, if he's lighter like he is now, he showed that he makes such a huge impact on the game and he just breaks the physics of football when he is that electric and he touches the ball every single play. So for the Ravens, I think that is going to be the calling card for them is Lamar just saying like screw it, like I have my contract now, I'm gonna go all out. My money is set, I'm gonna go all out and get a little riskier running the ball. And one other thing I want to say about Lamar is his other absolutely elite trait for how much he runs the ball and how aggressive he is when he runs the ball. Like he'll still lower his shoulder and stuff, but he still somehow finds an amazing way to never take big hits. You don't really ever see Lamar get like really popped. Like Anthony Richardson is 6'5", 250 or whatever the heck he is, super athlete. He gets his helmet blown off like four times every game that he plays. There's something about it's a skill. Like Will Levis will go and he'll get pummeled like 20 times. Lamar will shift and spin and, you know, dive forward and slide and get out of bounds, but he'll never take a big hit. The only time it's ever like, oh, Lamar took a big hit there is when he actively lowers his shoulder into somebody else. Like he's never the nail. He's always the hammer, if you know what I mean. So I think this season for the Ravens is going to be all about just Lamar. Um, really taking it upon himself. And I do think they have some weapons. So I think it's a recipe that will work. And nothing about that game worried me greatly about, the Ravens being a bad team or missing the playoffs like that. Um, I think I think they'll be a great team this year. And I think the Chiefs are still the best team in the NFL. Isaiah Likely, amazing game. I feel like I've kind of been thinking this in the back of my head watching the Ravens the last year plus is that Mark Andrews is really great, and obviously you paid him the money and he's got the notoriety, but Isaiah Likely is more dynamic than him. I kind of trust Isaiah Likely to go make a contested catch more than I trust Mark Andrews, even though he's been great at that. And I definitely trust Isaiah Likely to do something with the ball in his hands after that. So I think that timeshare is going to be a little more 50-50, maybe even leaning towards Isaiah Likely. He's just more dynamic. Um, and if they switch names on the back of their jerseys, you know, Isaiah Likely would probably be getting, you know, the even bigger share of the snaps. So that's going to be something I'm interested in. And seeing how that kind of plays out this year, I think he might fully overtake Andrews this year. Okay, a little bit long on that, but Packers Eagles. I think what this game showed, first of all, it's a little tough to take anything away from this game because the field was so bad. I feel like we saw that in a couple games, like in the Texans Colts game, everyone was slipping too. But this game was really bad where it kind of felt like everyone was on skates. And I feel like you saw all of these like big long touchdowns because it was just guys like catching the ball or whatever and then getting momentum in a straight line and then no one could change direction to go chase them down and like have an angle like we saw Jaden Reed in the super long touchdown twice. Then we saw AJ Brown and all that stuff was a little weird. I don't think Hurts played the best. I don't even think Jordan Love played the best, but I think the Eagles made a lot of mistakes in this game and it just kind of showed that they might just have the most well-rounded roster in the NFL. Their one major weakness, their worst position group was linebacker, and Zach Bond played like an all-pro. He had like 2 sacks and 15 tackles. Not that those are the great stats to go off of, but he very clearly made an impact on the game. Packers were lucky that Jordan Love wasn't hurt worse. I like to see Josh Jacobs kind of find a groove and look a little better towards the end of this because I'm very excited for him this year. And in my predictions video, I was leaning towards Jalen Hurts MVP, which, that's just going to come down to can they win, 14, 15 games. But then I was leaning Saquon Barkley Offensive Player of the Year, and I switched it to Derrick Henry because I thought maybe he'd score 25 touchdowns this year. But I almost want to go back to Saquon Barkley because this is everything and more that I had imagined in terms of Saquon Barkley getting put behind an elite offensive line and with other weapons around him and just allowed to go be an athlete. And it's going to be crazy this year. Packers, they got to get through the next 3 weeks, but I do think LaFleur is creative enough and they have the talent on defense enough to get by without Jordan Love and not tank the season. But that's going to be interesting to see. Okay, Cardinals, Bills. So my big thing, I think the Cardinals are actually a very underrated team. Their run game is awesome. I love their offensive structure. And once they get Marvin Harrison going, he looked horrible. Not only did they not look his way, but he didn't even look like he knew what he was doing. He didn't even look like he belonged on an NFL field. So that was weird. But Kyler Murray's great. I actually don't think he's going to put up crazy stats this year because I think they have a great run game and they know that their defense across the board is horrible. So it kind of pairs well that they're going to be really, really run heavy because then they can kind of control the clock a little bit and then, they're scoring and then their defense is letting up another score right away. And you're going to get into a shootout where you have the clear worst defense. Eventually you're going to get stopped and this is kind of like their way of almost playing defense at the same time. Because even though this game was high scoring, I felt like the Cardinals were like chewing a ton of clock for the Bills. I remember there was like 3 minutes left in the first half or something, and I was texting my dad. And I was like, it feels like Josh Allen hasn't touched the ball at all. But what this game came down to is the Cardinals have an awful defense, and Josh Allen is the second best quarterback in the NFL, at least top three. So I actually think the Bills offense looked all right with the pieces they have. The run game looked pretty good. Again, Cardinals defense horrible. I think it was a good game for some guys to get involved. Shakir looked good. Cam Coleman looked really good. Matt Collins looked good. I don't know if it's going to work against a better defense. We'll see how it looks against Miami. But Josh Allen showed that he's just freaking elite, and he's another person that breaks the physics of football. So I think the Cardinals are going to be feisty moving forward, and I think the Bills are going to be a very good team. This is what I said from the beginning. I'm a little worried what it's going to look like against, the elite of the elite, but they have Josh Allen, so they have a chance in every game. That's good there. So moving on to Steelers Falcons. I want to start this with the Steelers perspective. They score 18 points, hold the other team to 10. They kick 6 field goals, no offensive touchdowns. I think so. Obviously, they went with Fields when Russ maybe could have played, and it sounds like they're going to go with Fields again this week. I feel like the just muddiness and murkiness of the Steelers and the way they're set up to win right now, the pairing of Arthur Smith and Justin Fields within all of that, I think works really well, honestly. Their whole identity and, structure right now is to just make the game as ugly as possible, let teams play against them, and play in a game script that they're not used to playing at all. But the Steelers play this game script every single week, and that's we're going to run the ball a million times. We're going to make a couple plays downfield that are going to flip the field. We're going to play a really good defense, and TJ Watt is going to be a magnet to the ball, and we're going to play really good defense, and other players on the defense are going to force a couple turnovers here. And it's going to be just muddy, muddy, muddy. We're going to make the plays that count. And maybe that doesn't sound sustainable, but the Steelers have been sustaining this now for years. And Arthur Smith is kind of like the same. He's the embodiment of that on offense, where it's run the ball a million times, don't even use the elite weapons you have as much. Yes, they threw the ball downfield to Pickens and he made some great plays, but he's not even on the field that much. And Fields as a quarterback is, the same thing where it looks ugly, but he'll have 3 or 4 plays where he's launching the ball 40 yards to the other sideline, and he'll scramble and run someone over for 20 yards. So it's like muddy, 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 but then 4, 5, 6 big plays that change the game. And it all just works because I feel like Fields fits that bill, the Steelers fit that bill as a whole, Arthur Smith fits that bill, and then Mike Tomlin is a great coach. So that's kind of the Steelers' perspective. I think they're going to be very good all year. And if you can truly money the game like they are, you can like kind of beat anybody. You're susceptible to lose to some other people too. Like if you just don't make the plays when you like really need it, that's kind of what they count on. You can lose to some worse teams too, but I think they're going to be consistently good all year. From the Falcons, Kirk Cousins looks like he can't move. I mean, it's a weird game against the Steelers. It's a new offensive coordinator, it's a new coach, it's a new quarterback. It's all new, new, new. And that's a tough game to get rhythm in, or, TJ Watt is just dominating. Tough game to get rhythm in. And then, maybe Arthur Smith elevated that offensive line a little bit with his scheme. So, and you really need a good offensive line with Kirk Cousins because his only real ability to, you know, combat against pressure, because he's obviously not athletic to begin with and now can't move at all, doesn't have insane arm talent, is that his processing allows him to find outlets when there is a lot of pressure. And when it's new coach, new offensive coordinator, new scheme, new quarterback, he's clearly not as comfortable, and he's a little rusty. So I think for the Falcons, it's going to take a minute to pull together. Um, they didn't hit the ground running. I still think they're probably the best team in the NFC South. Although I did really like how the Bucks looked, but they can still pull it together. But it wasn't great. Selfishly, I really want to see Michael Penix at some point. So because I was a big believer in that draft pick, because I like Penix and I like the quarterback investment strategy. And I think it might be showing that maybe they needed a quarterback more than people were willing to admit in terms of to combat Kirk's injury, whatever. Okay, so I had to rewatch this game, Titans Bears. I rewatched some of these games on the condensed version. When it wasn't on, if the game wasn't on prime time, I didn't watch it through. And then, you see a bunch of things on Red Zone, and then the later games in the afternoon, you can kind of like see a good amount. But I did rewatch some of these games, including Titans Bears, because I really wanted to see how Caleb Williams did look. And Levis. Um, so here's kind of how this game went. The Titans actually looked pretty good. Their defense was surprisingly really good to me. The defensive line was great. T'Vondre Sweat looked like a man amongst boys. And that played a huge role. Him and Jeffrey Simmons, obviously. But those two paired together, Jeffrey Simmons is elite. But he's been the only player on that defensive line where they can just focus so much on him, and it plays a huge role. But T'Vondre Sweat really dominated in that game. And now their secondary is a little better. Titans defense looked very good, and that's what allowed them to get the big lead. And I will say, from an overall standpoint, it didn't seem like either coach really trusted their quarterback for this entire game. Both teams were just like run, 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 screen, safe pass. And from the Titans' perspective, it's kind of like, do you think you're gonna win a game with Will Levis by him being like an insane processor and making great decision, great decision, great decision? No, that is simply not Will Levis. He's got a very talented arm. He made a couple throws in this game that were like, whoa, like he was getting pressure right in his face. He got drilled, and he had like a dig to Calvin Ridley in between traffic. And it was like, wow, he had so much zip on that ball. Like, just let Levis go. Like, you have to treat Levis like Jameis Winston. Like, yes, it's not going to be perfect. If you just like unleash him and let him just attack downfield, he's going to make some bad reads. He's going to throw some picks. But if you try to rein him in too much, then you don't get the good side of that. And then you get what we saw, where he's just in a box and he's going to still have those bad decisions within there. So, I had some hope for what Levis coming in. The offensive line looked terrible, especially on the interior, and Latham didn't look good either. But I guess from the Bears side, Gervon Dexter looked really good, which I think is a big development for them. He's a player I like out of Florida, was a rookie last year. He had some real juice on the interior. But I mean, the Titans are feisty because I like their defense, and I think if they're going to have a chance this year, they need to just let Levis attack the ball downfield and have a 50% completion percentage and, throw 2 touchdowns and throw 2 picks. Like, they need to just let him go and do that. And maybe even tap into his rushing ability a little bit because he's really tough and he's an athlete. He takes big hits when he does that, which is tough, but at some point, it's like now or never with that. So I really hope Levis's career didn't just end by that, like obviously awful turnover, like couple turnovers. But we'll see. From the Bears side, um, Caleb Williams obviously did not play great, but rewatching that game, like I saw the flashes of the talent where he's different. He had a third down scramble where it was like 3rd and 13, and he makes a guy miss and he dives for first down. There's a few plays where you could see him rolling out and making a throw on the run. He had a really good one towards the sideline to DJ Moore. Um, and you can see his ability. It's just things are a little off, and that's probably, new offense, hyped up first game ever. um, he missed Keenan Allen on a touchdown, and that would have made the game look different. He also hit Keenan Allen on a touchdown that Keenan Allen uncharacteristically dropped. And I will also say, with the T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons stuff, they had so much pressure up the middle. And Ernest Jones is a great blitzer as a linebacker. The interior offensive line on the Bears played terrible. Um, Trying to deal with that. I've never seen more batted balls in my entire life. There was probably 7, 8 uh or probably 6 or 7, I would say, balls that were just batted down the line of scrimmage from Caleb. So I do think it's gonna get better. The Texans will be really tough next week for the Bears, but we'll see. And I'm worried about the Titans playing the Jets next week, I will say. That's a tough team to try to like rebuild confidence against because I still think their defense is really good. But so I am kind of worried for the Levis project, even though in a better situation, I think he could be something. But yeah, that's what I'll say on that game. Moving on to Patriots Bengals. So the Patriots really impressed me with their run game, with their defense. I think that's a great start for Gerard Mayo. So I want to give the Patriots all their flowers. I think Brissett is a very serviceable quarterback. On the Bengals side, obviously Jamar Chase had some weird stuff going on. T. Higgins didn't play, and then they just have a really weird week 1 again. Part of me wants to be like, this team should be good. They play weird and play bad on week 1 a lot for some reason. But I will say I've seen some weird stuff about the Burrow wrist injury from last year, like how it doesn't really fully heal and stuff like that, and that would worry me a lot as a Bengals fan. Um, Obviously it's gonna look better once you get T. Higgins and they figure some stuff out. The defense getting gashed on the ground, I think that might be a theme this year. Really don't think they have the personnel. Um, and with run defense, it's obviously very helpful to have a great run defense. But really, you just need to not have an awful run defense. And you can kind of um get by and be a good defense without an elite run defense. You can do it. But if your run defense just like can't stop anyone and they're getting 5, 6 yards of carry, then you're screwed. And the Bengals might have that this year. Um, and they have a very tough matchup against the Chiefs next week, which I really don't expect them to win. Obviously, the Bengals, for some reason, have a history of playing really well against the Chiefs. But gosh, I would be getting ready to walk over to the panic button on the Bengals. I don't want to do it yet, but that wrist injury, is some stuff I saw on his wrist injury is very concerning. All right, so Texans Colts. This is a game that I rewatched. Um, I guess I'll start with the Colts. The Colts, I think people keep forgetting that they were actually a good team last year and had no offensive higher upside because they had Gardner Minshew. Anthony Richardson is by no means a perfect quarterback at all, but he is one of the few people that I keep mentioning that literally breaks the physics of football. Him slipping down and throwing that 60-yard bomb to Alec Pierce is not anything any defense ever expects to have to account for. They got pressure and he's throwing it off his back foot and he launches a perfect 60-yard bomb to Alec Pierce, who's a 6'4" receiver who runs a 4.34 or 4.44, something like that. What are you supposed to do against that? Like that throw, watching it, literally did not make sense that those were the things that were going in that play, like went into my eyes and processed in my brain. It just didn't work. That is insane. So I think I've been, you know, I wouldn't say I was hyping up the Colts to like something that was crazy this offseason. In my kind of before I made that video predicting the season, I made an initial one and I actually had the Colts winning the division, which I then changed. But I think that should just show that I'm high on the Colts and I think they could be a 9-10 win team. I think Latu, had his rookie struggles going against Larry Tunsil. That'll build. One thing I was a little weirded out about is I didn't really feel like they got the run game going very well. I think Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson should be a little bit better. I mean, Anthony Richardson ran the ball well, but I don't know. It didn't look like there was a lot of room for Jonathan Taylor to go. And Jonathan Taylor is one of the most talented running backs in the league. And I was literally an equipment manager at Wisconsin while he was there for his senior year. So I'm very, very familiar with Jonathan Taylor's game. He is not a running back where he's going to like make the most out of something that is like a limited play. If you know what I mean? Like if he has a muddy play, people are plugging up gaps. He's not gonna just like find a tiny crease and push forward and make one cut and gash for 4 yards. He's always looking to make the explosive long breakaway sideline run. And then if he gets stopped, he's very good at then like trying to push a pile, and then falling forward in that. But he doesn't ever just be like, okay, like I'm reading a block here, I'm making one cut, getting up to a linebacker and falling forward for 4 or 5 yards. It's either I'm getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage and grinding and pushing my way, and pushing the pile for 2 yards, or stopped at the line of scrimmage if I can't. Or if you block it up perfectly, I don't know if there's any other running back in the NFL that I'd rather have than Jonathan Taylor hit an open hole, because he's 230 pounds. Safeties are going to bounce off of him, and you can't make an arm tackle on him, and he's going to burn angles all the way to, score an 80-yard touchdown because he's got 4.3 speed. So that's what makes Jonathan Taylor great. So, there wasn't a lot of that. So the Texans played sound defense. So he kind of was bottled up a little bit. He scored a touchdown. He was fine. But, I think that run game has the potential to be really good, which is why I'm holding it to a high standard. This is a tangent again, but on that, like, if there's a perfectly blocked run, like who else would you rather have? There's someone like, Devon Achane, who's probably the fastest running back in the league. It's like, oh, I'd rather give it to him. But even then, with Jonathan Taylor, he has the ability to take that and, run through a safety. Honestly, not knock on wood, get hurt, and just bounce off of tackles more, run through more arm tackles, things like that. From the Texans side, I, going into this year, thought the Texans would be good. They were really good last year, but I thought, CJ Stroud had this amazing rookie year, and I thought there was definitely room for regression. We see a lot of times these teams that are, playing a last place schedule and they got to play a first place schedule and they have a little bit of regression. He's a young quarterback. Regression isn't always linear. You don't always go up. Sometimes you go up a year and then you go down a little bit a year just to get a little bit more better than you were before the next year. And I thought, there's maybe some chance that Stroud, takes a little bit of step back because he played so well last year. But I don't think that anymore. I know it's only one game, but I kind of saw what I need to see from a few angles. So first of all, he's starting to really get good in that world where if things don't go right, you just kind of play backyard football and make things happen. And I know that maybe doesn't that sounds so simple, but in the next game we're going to talk about Tua. Tua is in structure when you just are simply quickly catching the snap, making a read, making a throw. Tua might be the best he might be the best quarterback in the league at that. But where he struggles is when that doesn't work, how do you go make a play? How do you have that right, like connection with the receiver to feel where there's space and find something? Stroud, specifically with Nico Collins, it's like he had a play where he's rolling out and there's nothing there, and then he throws the ball back to the middle of the field because Nico Collins and him were on the same exact page where he was going to go and shift spots and find the spot in the zone. Where things aren't perfect, he's really developing. Okay, I don't need to have everything schemed up. Not necessarily saying that he needed that last year, but he's getting really freaking good at it. And then even at the end of the game, where they have a play to seal the deal, and he lasers the ball to Nico Collins. Perfect throw on the sideline. Honestly, kind of dangerous. But it's like that play wasn't perfectly open, but he had the confidence and ability to make that throw. So not only that with the Texans offense, are they starting to really, become that kind of unguardable thing, which I think is what we see with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Where if you have everything perfectly on defense. You're covering everyone perfectly. You get pressure on the quarterback, but then he just somehow slips out of it and then breaks into backyard football. And then these receivers know exactly, where he's thinking they should go, and which breaks football where you can't do anything about it. Not only that, but then that really encouraged me too. On top of that, that's the biggest thing. But Joe Mixon had 30 carries for 160 yards and a touchdown. He had 160 yards without a carry more than 13 yards. I rewatched this game and I literally made a video about it and put it on Instagram. He was just running through people. He honestly don't think he was making the greatest reads and have the greatest vision behind the line, but they were creating holes for him, and then he was just hitting it 1,000 miles an hour, which is the opposite of what I was talking about Jonathan Taylor. He's looking for that, route to the sideline to break an angle and run all the way to the end zone rather than making one cut and running through a linebacker for 6 yards. Mixon was just doing that over and over and over and over and over. He looked, I don't know. I want to look this up right now. How much he weighs. But 220, he's a big running back. He looked like he was 230 and he was bullying people. He might have given himself 5 concussions in this game just from the sheer he just lowering his shoulder and blowing through people. It was crazy to see. And I don't think enough people are talking about that in terms of the Texans did not have a good run game last year, and if they have that consistency and on top of the CJ Stroud getting even better out of structure, this offense is going to be crazy. The only missing thing, they have great defensive coaching, obviously. Only missing thing is maybe some development in the secondary. They were kind of getting picked on a little bit. The Colts, bigger receivers downfield. But the Texans, I think, I was worried about which way it would slightly go variance-wise this year. It was, people are expecting them to maybe win 11, 12 games. And I'd be like, oh, maybe they're more of a 9 or 10 win game team. No, I think they're that 11, 12, 13 win team. Yeah. So then moving on to Jaguars Dolphins. This is exactly what I was talking about with the Jaguars. There's something fundamentally wrong with them. They have some talent, and they obviously get out into a lead in this game, and then they simply crumble. This was the story of their season as a whole last year, and I really think it comes down to coaching. And even Trevor Lawrence is definitely very talented, but I think some of his inconsistencies stem back to coaching. I don't think Doug Peterson is a good coach. I think there's something about the way he coaches that is like really good when a team like buys into it and it's good in the beginning and then it falls off. And I think some people who have played sports before might be able to relate to this when you have a coach and they have a really good message and it like gets everyone really excited and bought in to play, and then but then you realize that like every single week you get the same message and it doesn't really hit the same, doesn't really mean as much. I feel like Doug Peterson is one of those coaches that like can really get people to buy in, but he struggles to keep them bought in. And the Jaguars have just made some like weird offseason moves the last few years. And I think it's kind of catching up to them a little bit. That was my take going into this. Um, but Trevor Lawrence is a really good player, and I think they're just not getting the most out of him as they could. And the Dolphins, something that's interesting to me is that they the last few years have started off the season really hot, and then they don't, and it's because Mike McDaniel is so innovative. And I think he comes out every year working the whole off season on being more innovative than the next team, and then people have no idea how to deal with it. Like you saw it last year, they were rushing for freaking 400 yards. But then by the end of the year, people figure it out, they understand what he's doing, and they slow it down, and then Tua can't create out of structure, and then they're kind of just left in dust, right? I have a theory that I've heard some people talking about that maybe he is saving, he's holding his punches a little bit in terms of that extreme creativity because he doesn't want to, blow it all out in the first week or two and then have nothing come January. And that was how I was kind of feeling about the Dolphins. They just didn't seem as like creative as normal for the first part of this game, and then they kind of picked it up. They hit the Tyreek Hill bomb, obviously. Um, so they pulled it together, and I think the Dolphins are a very good team. Um, yeah, that's really all I have to say with that. It's gonna be interesting to see if they can be just as creative and innovative come end of season. We'll see how that develops throughout the year. All right, Panthers Saints, my hometown Carolina Panthers here in Charlotte. Woof. I guess I'm gonna start with the Saints perspective. I was calling for the Saints to be very bad this year. And I feel like I've done this the last 2 or 3 years, and then they're never quite as bad as I'm predicting them to be. And just because you have, a below average team and you don't have forward momentum doesn't mean you're a horrible team. So I keep calling for this, but I think the Saints are just like permanently stuck in right below purgatory, if that makes sense. Like a purgatory is constantly winning 7 or 8 games and just missing the playoffs, but they're like one step below that. They're going to win like 6 games every year. That's how I'm starting to think about them. Because the offensive line played. I can't even take anything away from this game because the Panthers look so bad. But Derek Carr is, fine. I think maybe people didn't, including myself, didn't really think about maybe another year in the system he can look a little bit better. Their secondary is really good. Tylee Fuanga look really good. Like he's getting to the NFL level and still bullying people. So maybe the Saints are just the way they're set up, not capable of being horrible like a 1, 2, or 3 win team, but they're just going to be forever stuck at like 5 or 6 wins the way they are now, and they're just going to be picking at 13 every year. So maybe I'm wrong and they're actually good, but all this game did was make me think, okay, maybe they're not a 3-win team, they're a 5-win team. That's where I'm at now. It's 1 week and they played a horrible team, probably the worst team in the NFL. So, Panthers perspective. Holy crap. I was a Bryce Young believer coming out of college. Size didn't really worry me that much. And I thought he just had a really good feel for the game. He wasn't an elite athlete, but he was a good athlete. And I felt like he really, really had that stuff I was just talking about with CJ Stroud, where things don't go perfect. He can really improvise, make throws on the run, and, have the confidence to make those throws, which is the final piece to becoming a really good quarterback. But I'm a little worried last year destroyed him. And then he's got a new head coach, new offense. He's got to figure it out. And I thought Dave Canales coming in and getting Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette would create a lot more, just like easy buttons for him. Have 3 4-yard completions in a row and gain some confidence because that's what his game is all about. Like, he has a good arm, not a great arm. He's a good athlete, not a great athlete, and he's small. His game was completely centered around, confidence and being able to, make difficult throws and, play backyard football and but also be good in structure. But if he has no confidence and he can't get into that flow state of where we know he's really good that he showed at Alabama, then he's just a good, not great athlete. He's small and he's he's got a good arm, not a great arm. And what are you left with? Um, and it's crazy because Stroud looks so good, and I was very confident coming out that I liked Bryce more. Um, I didn't think Bryce was the best quarterback prospect ever, but I definitely thought he deserved to go #1. So it's tough for me to just say like he's a bust and all of this when like I really liked him as a player, but I don't. I mean, he comes out and throws some awful interceptions. I don't know. I really don't want to say it's dumb. And I like Canales, but there's so he just hasn't shown anything. I'm really rooting for him. I don't think the door has completely closed yet, but really got to start showing something soon. Um, I don't really know how to end that with a take. If I'm gonna predict him to be good or predict him not to be, I really want to predict him to be good, but I felt kind of confident in that going into this game, and he looked terrible. So my hope is that Canales kind of figures things out, gives him more easy buttons in the offense, and it just is taking a little bit of time to gel. That's the hope. Vikings Giants. I'm gonna kind of speed up a little bit with these games. Vikings Giants. Darnold looked really good. I don't think Darnold is going to, just be an elite quarterback now or something, but he's in a very friendly environment. I really like Kevin O'Connell. Um, he made some great throws to Justin Jefferson. It was really cool to see. And I think and then on the other side, Daniel Jones looked horrible. Um, I really like Brian Dable. Um, but I think that they just kind of tied themselves to Daniel Jones because they like him as a person, and he like had a successful year with Dable kind of pushing all the buttons. But that looked horrible. Um, I think they really have to pull together against the Commanders next week, or this is going to go south bad. And they also need to find a way to get the ball to Malik Neighbors. And honestly, that's all I really have to say about that game. Dexter Lawrence is a beast. And yeah, the Giants better beat the Commanders next week. Or I don't know, do you start Drew Lock? You got to start thinking about it with that performance. Okay, Chargers Raiders. I'm ready to be kind of out on the Raiders. They're a really like cool, they were a cool, trendy offseason team where it was like, oh, this team is so feisty. Antonio Pierce really pulled them together last year. Um, but they're so offensively capped with Minshew. Like he is a good player, but you have no upside with Minshew. Like you know what he is. He's gonna make some good reads, he's gonna make some good plays. But I feel like there's like 3 plays that I can think of where he's like flushed out of the pocket, rolling out, and like very like if your quarterback has any athleticism at all, can like get the corner, reach the ball out, and get a first down. But he's getting stopped on like 4th and 2 when this happens because he just can't get past people and then doesn't have the arm to attack the full length of the field. And so there's that. And then I think Antonio Pierce made one of the worst punting decisions I've ever seen instead of going for it. And it's like, you guys are supposed to be like the bad boys and you are supposed to be like the tough team. And then you can't even trust your team to go get a yard like that. And then it's You have Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, which is really dangerous, but the rest of the defense is gonna, and yeah, I think the Raiders are just gonna be like, I think the Antonio Pierce experiment is just, he's kind of like the rah-rah coach, which I think is helpful in an interim position where it's got, you got to band everyone together and there's already systems in place. But when you have a full season of that, that's very different, kind of like sustaining that. It's like we talked about with Doug Peterson. It's like get everyone to buy in. Getting everyone to buy in initially is very different than getting everyone to buy in for a longer period of time. We'll see with that. And on the flip side, there's Jim Harbaugh, who I think has that ability to get people to buy in and consistently buy in. And I'm really pissed at Chargers fans. I'm really pissed at Chargers fans, honestly. So all offseason, I was saying not only are they going to take Joe Alt, let me say this again. Not only are they going to take Joe Alt, it's also going to be the correct decision. This team is perfectly locked up on both bookends with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. Joe Alt played amazing against one of the best pass rushers in the league in Max Crosby. And this team is now able to run the ball, play great defense with the culture that Jim Harbaugh is setting. And now their team, they're finally good at the things that really matter in football. Getting pushed up front, stopping the other offense. And they have a good quarterback that can threat the entire length of the field and make good decisions. That is a much better formula for winning football games consistently than all these weapons and flashy things on the outside with no meat and potatoes on the inside, where you're getting beat up on the offensive line, getting beat up on the defensive line. I really think the Chargers are currently changing their culture, and Jim Harbaugh is leading that. J.K. Dobbins also looked awesome in this game. He showed some legit burst. Yes, he got caught further down the field, but the burst to get there, which is much more important, he looked great. So I think he could be really good rest of season. And, Ladd McConkey looked good. Justin Herbert didn't have to do too much. And the offensive line is what is propelling this team forward to work. And I think they're really set up to be a good team this year. So Chargers fans, I'm kind of mad at you that you fought me on the Malik Neighbors versus Joe Alt selection, where I said they're going to take Joe Alt and it's going to be the right decision and they're going to be way better off for it. But now you get to, not only were you upset about it and you were mad at me, but now you get to reap the benefits of having Joe Alt and a much better offense. Think about, just if you took Joe Alt out of this picture and put in Malik Neighbors, and Malik Neighbors has 5 for 66 like he did for the Giants or whatever. What is gonna propel you forward to win more in this game? I truly think Joe Alt. All right, so Broncos Seahawks. This is a game I rewatched. I had to rewatch honestly to decide if the Seahawks offensive line was even, operational moving forward for them to have any type of success. And they played better in the second half, but their offensive line was so bad in the first half. The Broncos, I'm talking about the Seahawks offensive line, I said that. But the Broncos defensive line and edge rushers is good. It's not amazing. But the thing about them is that they can beat up a lot on bad offensive lines because they're very, very athletic. Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito, all these guys are very explosive. They don't necessarily have the greatest repertoire of moves and everything like that, but they're very explosive. So in a bad offensive line can lose quickly a lot. So going, against the Seahawks or the Seahawks next week against the Patriots and Keon White and a good defense, it does worry me because I do think Geno Smith is a good player and I thought he played well in this game. He just really didn't have a chance when, 3 people on the offensive line would just lose immediately, and he's got great athletes just flying and pressuring him. I thought their defense played really well, but it's also against Bo Nix. But it played really well, and that's Mike Macdonald. I was a little worried about Mike Macdonald in terms of I think he's a great coach and he will get this team to play amazing defense. But we did see a little bit in his very, very early days with the Ravens of them having a lot of coverage busts and just kind of like figuring out this new scheme and this new terminology that he has that's revolutionizing NFL defenses. I wondered if it would take a minute to implement, but it looked great in this game. But it's also rookie Bo Nix, so how much can you take away from that? I am very worried about the Seahawks offensive line, and I think that's the one thing that's going to hold this team back from being, a very good team. And they're going to be a little matchup dependent, moving forward. Broncos perspective, I mean, it's just all kind of about Knicks. The offense looked so stagnant. They couldn't throw the ball downfield. He tried to throw the ball to Seahawks defenders like 50 times. Ugh, I don't know what the upside is there. It's gonna be interesting to see how Bo Nix plays, but I don't really have high expectations for him to be a great quarterback. And they're kind of stuck in no man's land too. I know that's not a really optimistic outlook for them, but that's kind of the reality for them. Hey, Cowboys Browns. I really thought the Browns were gonna beat the Cowboys up in this game and just be a lot more physical than them, but it was the complete opposite. The Cowboys defensive line destroyed the Browns offensive line. I think once this game kind of got out of hand of the Cowboys defense dominating the Browns, that kind of took the wind out of the Browns' sails on defense. I think the Browns can still be very, very, very good this year, and the only way to do that is to just cut your losses with Deshaun Watson. Like, this is getting horrible. He is so bad. Obviously, he's an awful person. Like, if the Browns started Jameis Winston from here on out, I think they could win 12 games. If they leave Deshaun Watson in, they're going to be struggling to win 8. Like, that's how much of a difference is. That's how bad he is. And that's how good this roster is, too. Like, they could win 12 games with Jameis Winston. God, it's a horrible situation. Like, at what point is he playing bad enough for you to justify benching your $200 million quarterback? $250 million quarterback? I don't know. Cowboys, they looked very good, and they should get a lot of credit. I thought maybe they'd take a little step back this year, but they looked great. The unfortunate thing about the Cowboys is they've looked great in the regular season for a lot of years consecutively, and then come January or come, really big games that matter a lot, they haven't looked as good. So, I mean, this sucks to hear if you're a Cowboys fan, but it's kind of, they look great. But should you be that excited about it? Because teams like this, it really sucks for, where it's just like, yes, you're going to be good, and it doesn't really matter until January. I kind of feel that way a little bit about the Ravens. It's like, yeah, we should get to January. If we didn't, that would be catastrophic. But all that really matters is what happens then. So there's that. Commanders Buccaneers. I thought Jayden Daniels in his debut looked really good. He had the best rookie quarterback performance, for sure. And he looked a lot more comfortable than I thought. And I kind of thought the Buccaneers would send a lot of blitzes at him and kind of, mix him up. But, he looked really good. He's got the rushing ability translates. It's still working at the NFL level. And that's going to give him a, high floor. I think that gets forgotten when you're evaluating rookie quarterback prospects, because I think the first couple of years are so important for their development. That's why I'm kind of really worried about Bryce Young and Will Levis, that I think the first couple of years just does so much for your confidence moving forward for the rest of your career. If you can really run the ball like Jayden Daniels, or we saw Anthony Richardson last year as a rookie, then it gives you a much higher floor, and I think it can help you like get some confidence in some games, and you can move the ball a little bit better. Obviously, eventually you have to really figure out the passing game, and so I thought he looked pretty good. I think Commanders fans should be optimistic about Jayden Daniels for sure. Buccaneers. I just kind of like thought the Falcons were the best team in this division, but the Buccaneers might be that, and it might be because Baker Mayfield is just, reviving his career. 4 touchdowns against not necessarily a great defense, but I love Baker. He's got really good arm talent that people don't really realize. And he's just got that like competitive confidence that you really like to see that a team can rally around. And I think this team might be a little bit better than I was even valuing them at, but I think other people as well. Rams Lions. Matthew Stafford is for a while now has been playing the most underrated football in the NFL. He's been so great. The offensive line was destroyed. And honestly, I just went in this game and I thought the Lions would. I kind of expected this play out of Stafford, honestly, because he's looked that good and he's got great weapons and he's got a great coach and he's got a great scheme. But they're on paper, their defense is awful. And I really thought the Lions would just kind of, get some key stops with that, with their great defense, and then just pummel them on offense. And they really didn't. So I didn't really know whether to be very impressed with the Rams defense or a little bit like, dude, like Ben Johnson, like just run the freaking ball with David Montgomery for 6 yards a pop. Um, but the big thing for the Lions offense, so for a lot of this game, I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, is the Rams defense better than I thought, or is the Lions offense just clunky right now? But the biggest thing moving forward for the Lions is that Jameson Williams looked awesome. And that is going to unlock so much for a team that dominates the intermediate part of the field, both in the middle of the field and like the shorter passing game with, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. Like, it's going to open up so much when they have a legitimate vertical sideline threat in Jameson Williams. So maybe their offense, like if you're a Lions fan, you're a little concerned because it looked kind of clunky this opening day. But you should be honestly, I think you should throw all that out the window because Jameson Williams is going to have the ability and the chance to take this offense to the absolute next level. And then they really showed it in overtime. Like, granted, yes, like the defensive line is going to be even more tired and things like that. But they just literally ran the ball every single play and walked down and scored a touchdown, which I felt like the Lions could have done a lot more in this game. But, season long, that Jameson Williams aspect is more important. And maybe that's what Ben Johnson was thinking. He's like, you know, I know we're going to be able to do this for the season. Like, let's figure out this part of our offense because that's what's going to take us from, very good playoff team to we can win the Super Bowl. So that's kind of my take on those two teams. I think they're both going to be good moving forward. And if that part of the equation about the Rams defense is they're actually better than I thought, then the Rams are very scary and they can beat anyone when Stafford plays like that. When your quarterback plays that well, PFF grade wise, like Stafford isn't going to have a good PFF grade from that game, but you could just see how much he was creating and the way he's playing, they're going to be very good and they can beat anyone when your quarterback plays that well. If your defense is not just burnt toast. We'll say that. And lastly, we got Jets 49ers. I was picking the Jets to win this game. I think the Jets are going to be really good this year. But I know I was foolish to think that it would all come together perfectly week one against a team that's in the argument for the best team in the league. I was foolish to think that that would happen. I think this Jets offense with Aaron Rodgers, I don't think Aaron Rodgers looked bad, to be honest. Like the stats don't look good, and he threw a pick, and they were kind of stagnant. But I don't think he looked bad. I think there's some drops that stalled things out. I think the offensive line looked pretty good, which is the big thing that you wanted to see out of this against a very good pass rush and a very good defense. And the Jets' run defense was really bad. Which maybe their defense won't be as good as last year, but their run defense it's not that bad. They just went up against the best schemed run game in the NFL, and they got torched by it. I don't think the Jets defense is going to be a problem moving forward, and I think the Jets offense is going to gel at some point this year. And, I think the Jets are going to be very good, and I don't think you should just throw it all in the drain and say they're going to be bad this year because they lost in a game at the 49ers, who have been, one of the best teams in the league for the last 5 years. And the 49ers played a great game. So it's definitely not time to change my prediction on the Jets, and I don't think it was all hinging on this. I think I was just foolish to assume it would all come together in week one. The one thing I would be a little worried about, which I've been a little bit worried about for the Jets this year, this is going to be the big piece, is offensive receiving weapons outside of Garrett Wilson. I thought Mike Williams could be a big part of that. But he didn't look a part of the offense at all. They were throwing the ball at Allen Lazard. Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns, but he had the big drop. Like, I don't know. I have not changed my prediction that I think the Jets are going to be very good this year, and my pick for the AFC East, I guess I'm a little less confident in that after week one. Like, how can I be? How can I not be? But um, the Jets are still going to be very good this year, in my opinion. And like I said, a loss in San Francisco in a game that they're on should not change that. And I think it'll come together at some point this year. So that is my full week one recap. I hope you guys enjoyed. I want to get one of these videos out a week, like I said, where it's just kind of talking about the NFL or whatever it might be. I want to get a little bit more consistent on YouTube and maybe cut some of these up into shorts. Um, but I just love the NFL and I love talking about it and I want to share it with people. I want to share my passion. And I'm thinking maybe in 4 week increments, I'll instead of doing a recap, I'll do power rankings. I think that would be a good schedule. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Hit the like button, subscribe, and definitely comment if you agree, if you disagree, anything of the sort. Make sure to leave a comment. And like I said, subscribe, hit that bell for when I post. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.